Well, welcome. I'm Bob Johnson, one of the 20 directors of the Enterprise Forum. We're all volunteers and basically work to put on good programs. Some of you who've been here before know that we're one of 24 chapters of the Enterprise Forum around the world. We are actually, Santa Barbara is the smallest metropolitan area that can support one. Most of them are in big places like Los Angeles and Boston, Shanghai, etc. This is the last program of our 2009-2010 year. We're dark in July and August. We've, over the years, developed sort of a pattern of ending the season with a program that's focused on technology and its an entrepreneurial impact on a broad or familiar market. And a couple of years ago, we did a program on the internet and its effect on the newspaper business. Last year, we didn't know it was funny then, though. And then last year we did one on basically the entrepreneurial and atmosphere and the structure of the wine business in Santa Barbara County, because it turns out it's a tremendously entrepreneurial business with some 200 wineries. And this year we're basically going to be looking at what technology is making possible in a sector or segment of education. And I think this will be really interesting. I'd like to just review our sponsors. Our premier sponsors are Riviera Insurance, Bank of the West, the Radius Commercial Real Estate Group, Nassif Hicks Harris and Company, CPAs, Stradling Yelka Carlson and Roth, attorneys, Visus LLC, who develops web and database solutions, Pacific Coast Business Times, CIO Communications Solutions, Express Professional Employment and Search, and our supporting sponsors are DuPont Displays, Alma Rosa Winery, Mission Ventures of San Diego, and NewsHawk. And we thank them because they make all of this possible. As you can see, we're videotaping again. This is the 12th one we've done. These get broadcast on Channel 21. So it's my pleasure to introduce Brian Johnson. He put together this program, and he's going to moderate it. Brian has been a director for 4 years. He's the vice chair of the Enterprise Forum. He is the general manager of Radius Group Commercial Real Estate. He's a graduate of Auburn University, native of Alabama, but he's been to Santa Barbara for over 8 years. So let's welcome Brian. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. As Bob said, my name is Brian Johnson. I'm the general manager of Radius Group Commercial Real Estate, and I'm also the vice chair for the MIT Enterprise Forum for the Central Coast. We've got a very good event lined up for you tonight. What we're going to do is we're going to start with Linda first, and then she's going to give the story of Lynda.com, which is an excellent story. I heard a little bit of it last week at the South Coast Business and Technology Awards dinner. So I think you'll all be pleased with that. And then after that, we'll have Mark and then Michael come up and speak for a little bit about the impact and how they've enjoyed it and how they utilize it. So to start, Linda Weinman, graphics and design veteran, wrote the very first industry book on web design, Design in Web Graphics, in 1995. She's a prominent educator and the author of dozens of best-selling books. She was also a faculty member at Art Center College of Design in Pasadena in 1989 and has worked as an animator and motion graphics director in the film and special effects industry. Linda and her husband Bruce co-founded Lynda.com in 1995, and since then they've grown the company to over 150 employees, and if you include their contributors, they've got over 500 people working for them. They feature almost 50,000 tutorials, I believe, correct, online, and just this year they released an app that allows access to their content through an iPhone. I had the pleasure of attending a graduation in Davis this past weekend for my sister-in-law. She just graduated and received her degree in graphic design, and she is a subscriber to Lynda.com. And at a party with several of her fellow students, she mentioned that Lynda.com is what helped her graduate. They also asked me to see if Lynda.com was hiring, so we'll talk about that later. Now, Lynda.com's co-founder and executive chair and the 2010 Entrepreneur of the Year from the South Coast Business and Technology Awards, Linda Weinman.
Thank you so much. And we're going to do a little bit of experimental technology here where I am going to use my iPhone to link to the computer over there. And then, oh wait, it is linked, done. And we'll see if it works. There we go. So I call this presentation For the Love of Learning. And that is really what I hope Lynda.com inspires. To help people get in touch with the fact that learning can be wonderful and that we can love to learn rather than fear to learn. So I thought I would just start by giving some context in terms of what Lynda.com is for those of you who do not know. We teach computer skills via online videos, and as Brian was saying, we have 50,000 tutorials on hundreds of topics, and those are some of them. We teach, Word and Excel and digital photography and digital video, 3D blogging, how to use Twitter for marketing, all kinds of topics. And our library is always growing, and that is actually a very important component, is that we are a library. And at a library, you can check out a single book, or you can check out, theoretically as many books as you like. And on Lynda.com, you can basically come to learn one little answer to a problem, or you can learn many topics and many different softwares. We really believe in choice, and we're constantly striving to create more and more tutorials so that our members who join us can decide what it is that they want to learn, when and where they want to learn it. So this idea that people come to us knowing what they want to learn and being able to create their own learning path, unlike a lot of schools or books where there's sort of a linear curriculum laid out for you. This is very much up to you, what you want to learn, how much or how little. Obviously, because we're online, we're 24/7. And we are attempting to become device neutral in that we started as a website, and we are a website, but we now have an iPhone app, we work on the iPad, we work on a lot of other smartphones, and we're working on a mobile initiative to work on all smartphones and hopefully some other devices as well. So we are a subscription service. And what that means is that we're 100% member supported, and that's a lot like a PBS or an HBO. We don't have any advertising, and we are affordable in that one of the things that is part of our agenda is to be very accessible to a very broad range of people. People often ask us, who is our demographic, who's your target audience? And we believe that it's anybody who needs to interact with technology is our audience, be that potential person, young, old, living here, living elsewhere. The idea is that, so many people today need to be intelligent in terms of digital tools, and the digital divide just keeps getting wider and wider. So we're hoping that we're one of the solutions to bridge that. And we have payment plans where you can pay monthly, you can pay annually, and you can kind of come in and come out. So if you decided that you wanted to be with us for 1 month and then unsubscribe and come back 7 months later, we would still save all of your history and everything that you learned and your bookmarks and all the different tools that we have offered on our learning website. So we are all about accessibility. We target all skill levels. We are constantly adding new materials, and we like to think of ourselves as very deep. So, for example, we have over 80 different Photoshop courses. We have, certain subjects where we just really go deep. It's not It's not just, learning one little piece of it. It's, all the different aspects. And we also offer closed captioning, and that allows us to create text transcripts of all of our videos, and that enables a very powerful search that, down to the time code, can help you find exactly what it is that you've come to learn. So we're fully searchable. And nonlinear, getting back to that idea that you choose your own learning path, and sometimes people want to take a course from beginning to end, and other people want to come in and just get the answer to one little question. So some of our statistics, we have about 30 million visitors who come to our website every year. We have hundreds of thousands of members. We have produce close to 100 hours per month of new video tutorials, so we're producing a lot more video than most television stations and TV shows. We have a very robust production studio, some of whom are here representing, so shout out to the production department. We have over 48,000 individual videos in the library, and I'm going to show you a few of them so you can get an idea of what they're like. And we have 250 instructors and 160 plus people who are our full-time staff. And we've created an ecosystem where the instructors who contribute to Lynda.com are actually paid royalties based on the popularity of their materials. And many of them are making more money than they could earn any other way. We probably have at least a dozen people who are into the six-figure earnings with us. I think that's, I'm really proud of that. So that ties in very closely to our philosophy, which I'll share with you a bit more as I get into the story. So what it looks like to work at Lynda.com, we have video editors, and yes, we are hiring, I heard that question. We have sound engineers, we have customer support teams and technical support teams, and we have manufacturing. We manufacture, in addition to offering the library online, we also do manufacture physical product, the DVDs, and we have cinematographers and stage personnel. We shoot live action, and we also record in booths, and we have producers, a lot of really fun jobs. And like a lot of companies, we have all those standard departments as well. So how did we get so successful at Lynda.com? We believe that content is queen. And this is a... We're primarily known for teaching software and tools, and we have recently started to branch into filming documentaries of different professionals who we find aspirational. We started to think about the library and how we were teaching, and that it goes beyond a tool. It's what you're going to do with that tool, and who is doing something important with those tools. And so we've now created, I think, 16 or 17 and 22, fantastic, documentaries in the library. We have a series called Creative Inspiration, and I'm going to show you a couple of clips from those as well. And we also have courses on more what we call the principles of, so in addition to maybe learning how to lay something out in InDesign, we would also teach how to communicate through typography and what constitutes good composition and good layout, and we're going a little bit deeper than just teaching the tools, and that's been a really wonderful evolution for us. And we also recently are getting into a lot more project-style courses where you actually watch someone create something very specific and retrace their steps and learn from that. So I thought I would just share some sample tutorials with you so you can get an idea of the format and some of the diversity of what we offer. So hopefully this is going to play.
Welcome. My name's Chris Orwig. I'm a photographer, and I'm on the faculty of the Brooks Institute of Photography in Santa Barbara, California. And in this training title, Photoshop CS4 Retouching, Fashion Photography, you're going to learn some skills that will literally take your retouching to the next level. Now, what exactly are you going to learn in this training title? We're going to start off by focusing in on the small details. We're going to look at how we can clean up our images, because we need to do that first before we get to other enhancements. And then from there, we're going to start to look at other things like skin. How can we work on the skin? You know, sometimes in fashion and beauty photography, we need to work on the skin in a way that it looks really natural so that we can see pores. Now, other times, we want our skin to look shiny and almost surreal. Now, of course, we're also going to need to look at the eyes. How can we add a little bit of sparkle to the eyes? How can we brighten those eyes up? And also, how can we work on the makeup? Let's say we want to enhance or add makeup. What if there's other things we need to do that are a little bit more corrective, like work on structure or shape or fix teeth for that matter? We're going to cover all of these topics and more. And I'm incredibly excited about what we have ahead of us. So thanks for joining me on this one. Let's begin.
Here's another Photoshop lesson.
If you're shooting with a digital SLR, a common problem is that you might get dust in your sensor. And then that dust can actually show up in your actual images, like in this example here. I've got these little dots. And we're just looking for a really quick way to get rid of dust. And yeah, you could use your healing brush or your spot removal brush or a clone stamp tool. But because this is a title about blend modes, I'm going to teach you a really quick way to do it with blend modes as well. So I'm going to start by getting my selection tool. Just press the M key for the rectangular selection tool. And we're just going to make a really quick selection of the offending area, these dust spots here. We're going to duplicate this selection up to its own layer. You do that by holding down Command and J or Control J on Windows, and you've just created a duplicate layer here. I'm going to switch to my Move tool, press V for the Move tool, and I'm going to move these pixels over after I change the blend mode to lighten. So the keyboard shortcut for that, Shift Option G or Shift Alt G, will change your blend mode to lighten for this layer. Because the pixels are exactly the same in the same position, you don't see any change. But if I just start nudging these over, I'm just using my arrow keys on my keyboard. Did you see that? I just nudged it 4 times to the left, and those dots, those dust spots, magically disappeared. So I'll turn that layer off, the top layer. There's before, and there's after. And remember what the lighten blend mode does. It looks at the top pixel and says, am I lighter or darker than what's underneath me? And if I'm darker than what's underneath me, I'm going to make myself lighter. So the light and blend mode to the rescue, a very quick way to get rid of spots or dust in an image.
So you didn't know you were going to learn a little Photoshop here today as well. But I just wanted to show you kind of the length of the tutorials and the tone of them and how you get these different voices and different experts teaching things. This is one on web design.
Continuing our discussion of web design principles, we should take a look at information hierarchy. It's an important principle and one that's often overlooked. The way to think about it is, we see, then we read. Web designers often do 4 or 5 jobs. They design the graphic elements, they create the interface design, navigation design, interaction design, and often are required to design the information. But it should be done on a hierarchical basis that makes sense, from the most important to the least important, from the general to the specific. When I think about information hierarchy, I just remember this phrase, we see, then we read. When we approach a stop sign, long before we approach the stop sign, we see the red hexagonal shape. It isn't until we come up to the actual sign that we read the word stop. So that's how we understand what that means from far away, and that's why it works as a sign and keeps us from going through intersections too fast. The same principle also works in web design, that we usually do what we call 3 passes. We go from the general to the specific. On pass 1, we call this gradual perception. We see colors, shapes, main areas, things that pop to the foreground, things that go to the background, and the information sort of sorts itself out into main areas. In pass 2, we start really understanding what each of those areas may be. It might be branding, it might be content, it might be navigation. And in pass 3, we actually start to select from those different content areas. We actually pick an area to read deeply. We might look at the subsection title. We might look at an image. We might read a caption. We might see a word in an article that makes us want to know more. The same principle, or this idea of hierarchy, works inside your web page as well. We want to list things in the content area from the most important to the least important, thinking of the general pass, the secondary pass, understanding, and the third pass, detail information. Navigation works this way, and also the support elements. So let's see how this works out in the real world. I'm going to take you out to Jeffrey Zeldman's website. Jeffrey Zeldman is a web designer and a proponent of designing with web standards. He's got a great book out on it, and I often send my students to his site because he practices what he preaches. But let's pretend just for a moment that we're
on
seeing...
to the next one. This is one of our documentaries on a creative professional.
The user experience of television has been for a long time looking at a television piece of furniture in a home about 10 feet away. That was the old way that you define television. It's been completely redefined, of course, recently. If you go to a media company now, you go to ABC and say, what are you now to your audience? It really is in three big categories, is the way they divide it up. And say broadcast, 2 foot is on the computer and internet, and 1 foot is mobile. At Schematic, we divide it up slightly differently. So it's saying that there's still that sort of anchor common experience, a communal experience around friends and family looking at television about 10 feet away with remote control. But then you have a line where you're looking at either computer or on a personal device as a personal experience. That's really one person consuming, just rather than multiple. And then a new area for us has been public media, where it's really maybe one person consuming, but many people looking. So it's the opposite of private. It's an open kind of public.
I'm going to move on. And I believe I have one other creative inspiration, Margot Chase, who's a graphic designer.
Welcome to Chase Design Group. We're standing in Silver Lake, Los Angeles, which is a neighborhood I've lived in for over 20 years. And we've been in this building for only 2 years, and I think you can see why I like the building. The sign is amazing. The building was built in the 20s originally, and it was a pest control building, and then it was an art gallery for a while, and then it was another design firm, and now it's ours. And this is the first space that people see when they walk into my office, and there are some samples around, and there are a series of 4 posters on the wall behind me that represent about 20 years of our work, logo work primarily. Starting in 1986 and going all the way to now. It's really important, I think, to have the mood of the space reflect the work, and I think our work is a little unusual in some ways, and it can be eclectic. It's always really functional, so I think that's a little bit what the space is like. It's not too fancy, it's pretty functional, and it's a little eclectic. It's got things on the walls, and this is a mural that actually represents the scene outside this wall. So there's.
So I'm going to stop it. But, we really thought it was important not only to show designers and creative professionals who are doing really interesting work, but to look at their workspaces and look at their, how they work with their employees and what kind of work they do and what their processes are. And so it's been really a joy to create that series, and it's very, very popular. It seems to resonate with all of our membership, not just people who are into the specific areas of the people who we've profiled. So how it all started, when I was growing up, I was, I like to say, the product of divorce, drama, and demands. I was I born in the 1950s. My parents divorced when I was 3, and most kids that I knew didn't even know what the word divorce meant. It felt like I was kind of like the only kid in the whole world who had come from a broken home. And because there was a lot of drama in my early life, and I was the oldest, I think I just always became this super responsible person who took care of lots of people and really liked to be the mediator and the peacekeeper and the people pleaser, and that, I think, even though it was a challenging childhood, has really made a lot of my characteristics really successful in what we do now, helping others. I'm also the product of an alternative education. When I was in junior high, I read a book called Summer Help, and the premise of this book was a school that was in England that allowed kids to basically run free, have no prerequisites, and decide what they wanted to learn. And I was quite miserable in junior high, and I think it might have been part of my just troubled childhood and just kind of feeling like a little bit of an outsider because I came from this broken home and everything. And this idea just really was exciting to me. And I found a local alternative high school. These things really don't exist anymore. They were called free schools when I was in junior high. And I went to the principal and I said, I really want to go to your school and my parents can't afford it, but I have a job working at a hot dog stand. I make $80 a month. Will you let me come to your school? And he did. And I was the only student there who was putting myself through high school. Everybody else's parents were paying for it. And that kind of continued through to my college as well. I went to an alternative college, the Evergreen State College, where you are allowed to really define your own study program. You don't have prerequisites. And there were years in high school where I really didn't know what I wanted to do, but I was sort of allowed to get bored, and I was allowed to feel that feeling of being lost and not knowing what I wanted. And then I was also allowed to figure out what it was that I wanted. And I think that alternative education really has played a big role in Lynda.com, in that, I'm so proud that people come to Lynda.com wanting to learn. We actually aren't forcing anybody to learn. They're not coming to us because they're making a grade or because they're, under some sort of threat that they have to know things. And I think that this, really shaped a lot of my feelings about education and people being allowed to figure out what it is that they're interested in and find their passion and believe that finding your passion is a valuable thing. In 1982, I had a boyfriend who brought home an Apple IIci. This is, before the Mac. It was before anything on the computer had, what we now call the graphical user interface, before the mouse. And he was very upset with me that I wasn't interested. So to appease him, I kind of pulled out the manual and just dug through it. And I found that I was quite fascinated by the computer. And what was kind of ironic was when it was all said and done, he called himself a computer widow because I actually loved the computer and I was fascinated by it. And I could not have known that it was anything that interested me in college because it actually was not invented until 2 years after I graduated college. The personal computer was invented in 1978 and I graduated in 1976. So it was an entirely new field. And I, really just sort of devised this method of teaching myself something, and then all these people came out of the woodwork because it was right at the dawn of the computer age, asking, how did you do this? How did you do that? And I realized, gee, I really enjoy explaining how I did all this stuff, but all I was really doing was just retracing my own steps. And so everybody started to ask me how they could do this and how they could do that, and I started teaching. I first started as a consultant, and then I got offered jobs at some pretty amazing institutions. I taught at Art Center College of Design for 7 years. I was an extension teacher at American Film Institute, at UCLA Extension, and San Francisco Multimedia Studies program, and I became an expert in how to do, my main interest was in graphics and creative uses of the computer. I started consulting. I was just really lucky to be sort of in the right place at the right time with the right skills, and I had some wonderful clients. And I started writing, and I started just writing little articles about techniques and how you did certain things, mostly around the area that interested me, which at that time was motion graphics and animation. So I met my husband, Bruce, while I was teaching at Art Center, and I like to say it was not love at first sight because I was actually his teacher. And halfway through the semester, you had to let someone know if they were in danger of failing your class. And that was when I first met Bruce, because he would come to my class and his eyes were always bloodshot. I was convinced he was on drugs. He'd fall asleep in class. He wasn't turning in any of his assignments. And halfway through, I had to give him this warning, and he was very apologetic, and he was actually, it turned out, just extremely shy. And he said, I'm really sorry, I'm not taking the class for a grade. I'm just trying to pick up some tools so that I can learn how to incorporate what you're teaching into my own style of artwork. And he pulled open some files and my jaw hit the floor because he was light years beyond what I was teaching and beyond where everybody else in the class was. And he was really, really a talented artist. And so I said, you know, it's fine that you're not doing the assignments, but let's just communicate, just show me what you're doing. And in the end, he passed the class. And in fact, I think he got an A. And we just became friends because I realized that, you know, he just had a different objective than the other students who were there, and also he was incredibly talented. And over the years, I would keep in touch with students after they graduated, and Bruce called me one day and he said, I have to apply for a job and I need to learn a certain piece of software that I was an expert in called After Effects. And so I said, well, I'll trade you a painting because I loved his paintings. And so we kind of did we reunited maybe 3 years after he graduated or something. And then after the course of a couple of years, we fell in love and we got married. And it was just this very unexpected, direction. But I wanted to talk a little bit about, the career path to actually building the company together. In the beginning, I discovered the web when I was teaching at Art Center, and I wanted my students to learn how to do it. I wanted them to learn how to create web pages, and I went to a bookstore looking for a book to assign them on how to learn this and discovered that it wasn't there. And so I built my own website, and I actually had been, I thought, when I didn't find that book, I really need to write this book because someone needs to write it, and I'm already a writer. I'm already writing for computer magazines, and I'm already a teacher. I understand how to teach and write. And so I couldn't get a publisher interested in the book, and I had, I pitched a magazine that I would write a series of articles, and that they would, if they would let me, I would have this, a series. And so they agreed to that, and I published about 12 articles. They ended up becoming the chapters for my book. And as I was writing these articles for this magazine, I had someone write to me, and she was Debbie at Debbie.com. And she said, I love your articles. I'm Debbie at Debbie.com. Come to my webpage where all the Debbies on the web, I have links to all the Debbies on the web. And this was so early on, there were only about 30 Debbies on her webpage, right? And I thought, well, I wonder if Lynda.com is out there. So when I saw it, I instantly purchased it. And then Art Center, where I was teaching, didn't have a website. So that became my website, Lynda.com. And I taught myself how to do web design and all the different aspects that I was writing about in my book in these chapters. And the Art Center itself didn't have a website, so it became also the website for my student work as I was teaching. And I wrote this first book in 1995. It was published in 1996. And Bruce collaborated with me on writing the book. And this is the cover. And he painted the cover. And this was a book that our next book, which we wrote together. And the books were eventually translated into lots of languages. And I think we haven't written, our company hasn't published any books for a while, but I think we got up to like about 15 or 20 different books that are out there in the universe that we wrote. So from 1996 to 2002, first we got married, and then on the royalties from this successful book that I wrote, we decided that we would live in Ojai. And our thinking was, as long as we could get internet, and at that time it was only dial-up, there was no broadband, and we could get FedEx, that he could continue his illustration career and I could continue writing, and we could live in this sort of idyllic area, raise our daughter, and live in Ojai. So when we got to Ojai, we decided to start a school, and we were the very first school that taught web design. And Bruce and I literally did everything from setting up the computers to sweeping the floor to buying the food to writing the curriculum to teaching the classes to sweeping up when it was done. It was just the two of us. And within the first year, we had so many students coming to Ojai, California to our school that we did $1.7 million in revenue. And we actually started the school with $20,000, and we like to say we started Lynda.com on $20,000 because we really did, and we've never ever taken any kind of investment, and we're still running on our own profits and fumes to this day based on that one tiny little investment. So Our first year, we had students coming from all over the world to Ojai, California. And it was, our company continued to create books, and we started to create videos. Originally, they were on VHS tapes. And then we decided to change over to make them digital, and we started publishing them first to CD-ROMs and then to DVDs. And we were, you know, kind of going along at a great clip, and I think we got up to be about 35 people till the end of 2001 when the dot-com crash happened, and we laid off a lot of our team and had to reduce our staff to about 9 people. And so we decided to publish our videos to the web in February of 2002. And it was, we took a poll amongst ourselves, the 9 people remaining, you know, how many people did we think would sign up to watch these videos in the first month? And no one guessed how low the number was. I think it was 33 people signed up that first month. Everybody thought it was going to be 1,000 and 500. We had all these sort of ideas that it was going to catch on, but it didn't at all. But about maybe 3 or 4 years later, we started to notice that it was just growing at an astonishing rate. And in 2004, we were 14 people, and today in 2010, we're 160. So we've really grown a lot in the last few years. So I wanted to talk a little bit about some of the values that we believe in. The love what you do. It's kind of our honor and privilege and joy to create this training, and I think you can see by the quality that we really put a lot of effort and energy into capturing each subject matter and really crafting these videos in the best possible way, that it's our job to help people, and we actually get great pleasure from helping. We are a very customer-centric company. We always think about putting our members first. We're passionate about quality. If we don't find that something meets our own internal quality, we kill it. We believe in creating an indisputable value for the members. You can sign up to join lynda.com and have access to these 50,000 tutorials for $25 a month. And some of the annual plans, it even gets less expensive. So we want people to just never question that cost, that what they're getting is just so much more valuable than that. We believe in treating everyone with dignity. The people who come to us wanting to learn are not stupid. I think a lot of people feel really sheepish and bad about themselves that they don't know this or they don't know that, but it's our goal to never speak down to anybody and just have respect for our members' intelligence. They're just coming to us because they don't know something. It's not because they're stupid. To always strive to be better. I think we are our own worst critics. To find the very best trainers and retain the very best trainers, and to pay quickly. I know that's kind of maybe a funny thing to throw in here, but it's something that we've always lived by, that we pay our bills before they're due, and we pay, a lot of people who work with us are freelancers, and that's how they pay their rent and for their food. And I think maybe because my background was as a freelancer, I've just always really believed in that, and I think it's paid off for us because we get a lot of preferential treatment because people know that we're very responsible when it comes to paying. We have unprecedented benefits at lynda.com, and we really value our staff and you know, believe that they are a huge part of our success, and we treat them accordingly. We've definitely had a few stumbles. I sometimes get asked, did you do anything wrong? And it does seem like it was just this direct path to success, but it actually there were many struggles. But for us, because Bruce and I don't have any kind of formal business background, and we got the company to a certain size, but we really needed to bring in professional management and people who had more business experience than we did when we got to be a certain size. And we tried to find the right fit, and we weren't able to very easily. And we finally, a couple of years ago, started to get the right senior management team in place, which has really helped us. It was really hard to retrofit budgets and controls into our company because we were so kind of shooting from the hip and just doing it our way, and we always had enough money because we were just constantly reinvesting ourselves, and so we never really had to worry that much, but we also just didn't have that discipline that you have to have when you get to be a certain size. So that was a real challenge to introduce some of that kind of discipline into the company. And for a while, when we were doing books and conferences, we weren't paying enough attention to the online training library that was growing so fast. And so a couple of years ago, we decided we're not going to make books anymore. We are a video publishing company. And so we really got a lot more focused, and that was good for us. And I think in the beginning, it was, we were definitely a little family-run business, and it was kind of hard to make this decision, because we were at an inflection point. Are we going to really grow this thing as big as it can grow, or should we stay small? And we just realized that for our purpose, to help other people and to be a resource for learning these computer skills, that we serve our audience best by growing it. And so that's really been our mission. And we're constantly talking amongst ourselves of how we can scale and where we're going to be next year and what we need to plan for. And so that's very much top of our mind. And then I think kind of getting back to my alternative education and just looking at where education is today and the role that we are playing in this new landscape, I think we have an opportunity as a culture, and technology is bringing an opportunity to completely reinvent education, and Lynda.com is part of that movement. And so I kind of put together a little comparison list here of, with a lot of schools, we have, budget cuts, we have wait lists for classes, there's this real sort of feeling of scarcity that Lynda.com has unlimited capacity, that there's so much outdated information, and the fact that we're able to stay current and really be so agile with this video publishing method as opposed to the amount of time that it takes to write and publish books, which is what we used to do. Computer technology changes so quickly that we really think that, doing it with video is a huge advantage. And that, we're seeing record dropouts in high school and even college for many reasons, one financial and other boredom. And we're watching our business just flourish and grow, and people really embracing this way of learning. And I think for a lot of institutions, there's this sort of one-size-fits-all. You're in this class, this is the curriculum for the class, it's not going to change, you do it this way or you don't make the grade. Whereas what we're doing is highly personalized, and we're allowing people to create their own learning paths. And that teachers, there's such a huge digital divide today between students who've been born with a mouse in their hand. We were having this conversation with Guy earlier. His daughter was unimpressed to meet the person who invented the mouse. I said, that's because she was born with a mouse in her mouth, like a spoon in her mouth. But anyway, and the fact that our teachers are experts in technology and really embrace technology and teaching. So we are the opposite of standardization. We're about personalization. It's not about the degree, it's about what you have come to learn and what you want to learn. No one is being pushed by grades, they're being pushed by internal motivation, and internal motivation is something that lasts with you well beyond school. It's a very important skill to build. Instead of blaming what's wrong with education, people are coming to us and they're owning their own education. It's not about a judgmental, you're getting this grade, you're doing this wrong, you're comparing yourself to some other student. You're able to really learn in a very safe, anonymous manner. And that the fact that it's more of a sensory experience through video, it's not just text, it's not just translating words on the paper, how does it mean, what does it mean to you, how do I perform this operation, but that the fact that we use audio and motion, and that it's just a much more effective way to learn. And also the idea that you can hear lots of different voices. If you're learning Photoshop, it's really neat to learn from like 20 different people. And we're also used in education. In fact, I'm excited that Michael Berman is here today, who's out at Channel Islands. But I think he also saw a Lynda.com install at Art Center College of Design too. And a lot of the teachers originally are very frightened to bring in a membership service like this where their students are going to have access to all these videos, because they're sort of frightened, like, will they still take my class? Will they still value getting the degree at my institution? But what we hear over and over again from teachers is it's really great to have the additional voices to reinforce the concepts and help the students see that there are many perspectives. And so from a teaching perspective, teachers have the opportunity to mentor instead of having to teach the same tool class over and over again, work more one-on-one with students with their projects, help them through a tough part of a project as opposed to rote teaching over and over again. Getting to more of the big ideas instead of the drills and the rote teaching, and focusing more on critical thinking and on communication and on collaboration, and challenging the students to think on their own, while students have the opportunity to discover what they love. It's, you know, maybe you even got inspired to learn something that you didn't think you were interested in by seeing those little snippets of videos. I know Mark Sylvester, who will be here to talk today, tells me that sometimes at night he just goes on Lynda.com and kind of like Russian roulette, like what do I want to learn, and hits something and just sort of, you know, grows his mind a little bit. So the opportunity to find a passion, to develop skills on your own pace at your own time, building confidence, that you can learn something on your own, and being responsible for your own learning. So I have a couple of, just 2 other short videos to share, and then a summary slide, and then we'll go on. But I wanted to just share with you what a couple of different site members have said. We have an installation at Patagonia, and I know since we're here in Santa Barbara, that would be interesting. So let's listen to what they have to say about their site license.
Patagonia was established in '73. It was a band of surfers and climbers who pretty much reflected the core values of minimalist style and approach. It leaked on later into the clothing. That's what they make now.
Our subscription with Lynda.com is what's called a multi-user account, and I have paid for 10 subscriptions, which means that at any time I can have 10 employees anywhere in the world taking classes off of Lynda.com. The curriculum's quite broad, so depending on their level of interest, they might venture out and take classes in another field. So for example, someone might sign up to take Excel, but then find out that maybe they want to get their Outlook inbox a little bit more squared away, so they might take the Outlook class.
There's a lot to learn. You can start out as a beginner on Lynda.com and not be frustrated. And you can go in as an intermediate and not be frustrated. And you can go in as an advanced person on Illustrator and not be frustrated that it's too easy.
Traditionally with Excel programs, you go to a course and spend a couple hours in a room with other people, which is great when you're trying to figure it out yourself, but I'm so hands-on and visual that I can, you know, if I have a half hour, can go into Lynda.com and pick a couple of different classes, and you know, some of them are 5 minutes, some of them are 3 minutes, which is great because you know, if you get disrupted, then you can always return to it.
I really like the interaction. I feel also the tutorial guiding is very nice. It's very friendly. I have no problem whatsoever tuning out with Lynda.com. I can put it inside my ear and I can be at my computer but still have my other ear accessible to the world around me. And so when I'm looking at the computer, I can have my mouse and I can mimic his movements. And so one thing I've gone towards is refining my idea of what that can do for my job function.
I'm the operations manager for our program, so there's a lot of different programs I get to learn, and there's so many programs I get to learn that like just at least having the beginning knowledge of one of them is great. So that's a good thing about Lynda.com is I get the chance to just at least start on those programs.
Usually when we have Lynda.com, say I might have a month or 2 of Lynda.com, I just go on as much as I can, and it's encouraged, that's encouraged.
One word to describe Lynda.com would be fantastic.
It's user-friendly.
In one word, I would describe Lynda.com as innovative. And perhaps that's the reason there's such a great parallel with the Patagonia brand, because we consider ourselves an innovative brand. So the synergy between the 2 brands is, seems to be a nice match.
And then just another testimonial from University, Full Sail University. We just went to visit them in Florida a couple months ago.
So Full Sail University has been around 30 years now. We have just over 8,000 students going through the campus right now and online. We have 28 degrees. Those are associate's degrees, bachelor's degrees, and master's degrees. The degrees split into what was known as a media arts and a digital arts. So there's degrees in film and recording, engineering, and those kinds of things. And there's also degrees in digital arts and design and computer animation, and then the web design and development degree.
You know, it's very important these days as an educator to teach 21st century skills. And one of the biggest skills we can teach is teams, collaborations, group work, things of that nature. We as teachers need to be guides and collaborators with our students as they enter into this new world. And so I think it's very beneficial that I've got not only my excellent faculty, but the excellent faculty at Lynda.com to help our students navigate through this new landscape.
We use Lynda as a combination of homework and in-studio assignments. For one example, our digital video and editing courses, they really need to focus on storytelling and editing styles. So when we're using Final Cut Studio, we quickly run them through the Final Cut instructions from Lynda, as well as a combination of tutorials and projects that we have them go through. That way editing and the buttons and switches are just second nature at that point, and we can get to what we really want to teach them.
I think there's a few benefits that the students get out of having the Lynda.com accounts. First of all this stuff is current, and Lynda.com always makes sure that they're current and cutting edge on things. Through the life of a student time here on campus, 21 months, there's going to be software revisions during that time. Typically, books and textbooks and resources that we need to help support that curriculum that we develop aren't available in mass quantities. Lynda.com resources are always current and available, so we can look to them immediately for that extra resource.
Every month our classes change. We go to the distribution center where we grab our textbooks, and that's where we get the Lynda cards. So it's kind of saying something like, you get your books and here's also this card, which goes way beyond the books. It's something that I definitely use every month.
Lynda.com gave me another voice. If I didn't understand it from the instructor's tutorials, then I could go to Lynda.com and I could then get another way of looking at it.
And I'm definitely going to keep on using it even after I graduate. I think it's definitely going to be serving me as a great asset in just keeping up with trends and keeping up with software.
So initially when we started looking at utilizing Lynda.com as an additional resource here, I did have a few concerns. As we started looking at doing the resources and doing the research into the training library, I could see that, yeah, this is really valid stuff, this is really good stuff. And it was a really interesting thing that happened. We had another instructional voice that would be teaching our curriculum besides us.
It took us a little while to get adjusted to having sort of another voice in the classroom, but once you realize it's not about your voice, it's about the students, then you welcome it. You welcome the different approaches, the different opinions on a topic. What we're teaching in the design curriculum has many different approaches, and so being able to present that to the students is just beneficial.
We have seen an increase in just the amount that they can do with the media because of using the Lynda accounts. They've really gone above and beyond of what we've even expected, and their technical ability has really soared because of going through these different videos and getting so excited about the possibilities that they never even knew existed.
So I thought I would just share some of the key lessons that are true for me, and finding that I had a passion to learn how to use the computer and then share what I knew and help people was something that I feel really lucky and blessed that I got to find my calling in life, and I wish it for everyone. I think when you do what you love, everything falls into better place than if you're forcing yourself to do something. I have a lot of young entrepreneurs coming to me. I just had one this week, and he was telling me a business plan and a different idea, and it was all kind of based on a lot of theoretical ideas of what he thought would work. And I think one of the things that really worked for us was we knew that there was a demand for what we do and that there was a need for what we do. And it wasn't just a business idea to make money. It was actually first a passion, and then it was something that we validated there was a need for and that people liked our style of doing it. And, you know, we've been in business for 14 years, but over that time, we have so many loyal members and customers who really believe in us and trust us. And that, you know, doesn't just come with like a business plan idea. That's something that you have to really walk the walk. And I think one of the things that we've really stuck to over time is the high quality work that we want to produce. We're always pushing ourselves to do better and better quality, and it's kind of our own internal challenge that we have grown to embrace and love, that, you know, just being satisfied with the status quo isn't enough, to really be able to predict what people want and need and do it in a way that's compelling. To never give up when doors are closed, you know, just figure out another way. That's always be willing to look at ourselves and reinvent the way that we're doing something, because, you know, nothing stays the same. That's the only thing that's true, right? And to, you know, stick to our core values and competencies. I know we've had there are a lot of other ideas. I mean, I've had people come to me and say, you know, will you be my partner and start a medical video library with me? Or, you know, you could really populate lynda.com with a lot of other topic matters. And we know that, but I think one of the reasons why we've been so successful is we've really stuck to what it is that we do well and that we understand and that we know, and I think that's been one of the keys to our success. And then, you know, something that I didn't put on here that I just recently realized was an accomplishment that I'm really proud of, is that when I first started teaching computers, it was so early on, there really was no career to be a computer skills teacher. You know, the only thing that existed were sort of these horrible manuals written by engineers, and it was my kind of freak gift that I could, you know, figure out how to explain things and really enjoyed explaining things. And then, you know, getting jobs as a teacher at these amazing institutions, to have taught at Art Center and American Film Institute and UCLA and all of these places, just because, you know, I was sort of one step ahead of all the students, was also, you know, really an amazing experience as somebody who invented a career and then kind of found all of this success with it. And one of the things that I realized that's an accomplishment that I'm so proud of is now we've created an ecosystem and a vehicle for other people who are practicing the same craft that I started practicing kind of all by myself. And they're earning their living and they're helping, you know, we're able to help so many people. I mean, the idea of imagining hundreds of thousands of people who are, you know, consuming what it is that you're producing is pretty awe-inspiring. So, you know, it's just been an incredible journey of kind of having the right interest at the right time with the right skills and taking advantage of some of the opportunities that existed so early on, and now finding ourselves in this position where we're really kind of charting a new course and inventing something new. So thank you so much for listening, and I guess we'll go on to the panel and questions. Thank you.
Wow, that's truly an incredible story. I think that lynda.com could probably be considered as the original app store, if you think about it. Now, with those 48,000 titles, I'm sure there's one in there on video editing that will somehow be able to make me look like George Clooney when this is all over with. So I'm going to depend on that. No, it's not a magic wand? No? Okay. Next up, Mark Sylvester is the CEO and co-founder of Intro Networks, which offers smart social networks that are dedicated to helping people identify and then make meaningful connections to who and what matters to them in their work and interests. Since 2003, the company has successfully deployed over 250 intro network communities across a growing customer base that includes such high-profile companies as Adobe, British Airways, Starcom MediaVest, HP, Harvard, Autodesk, United Way, Fortune, CMP Media, Xerox, Ziff Davis, and Intel. So with that, please welcome Mark Sylvester.
You'll excuse me, I'm taking a quick class here on lynda.com on how to give an effective presentation in front of a bunch of people, which is really the point of why I have lynda.com on my iPhone. And it's for something that I learned, it's called just-in-time training. And just-in-time training is really an important thing today in the marketplace, because as technology and skills are needing to evolve so quickly, you need to find an answer and you need to have someone teach you something very fast. We also have a national case of ADD, which makes it really tough for us if you really need to sit and apply yourself and learn. So how do you marry those two things together? This evolving need for, I need to know something right now because my boss just asked me to do a project in Excel that involves pivot tables. I don't know what a pivot table is, but I can go onto Google and then I have 16,000 resources and I have to read, and my ADD doesn't want me to read. So what I can do is I can come here and I can look up Excel and I can find there's a couple of classes. In fact, there's one for the latest version, and I can watch it. And watching it, it's interesting. I won't spend 5 minutes to read, but I will spend 10 minutes watching something. I don't know about you, but it's more compelling and it's more engaging. Compelling and engaging is really important if you want to capture the mind of the learner. So for me, just in time means as an executive, I'm also, Linda, you were talking about you and Bruce having to do everything in the beginning. We're a small company here in Santa Barbara. I maintain our website. I do our Twitter stuff. I write the blogs. I don't know all of that stuff. I try, but I was glad to see there's a whole new series of tutorials on Twitter, which was great. So maybe we're going to learn. I'll just jump to the last lessons where all the kind of the advanced things are. But as an executive, do you really know how to get the most out of the office productivity tools that you use? Word, PowerPoint, Excel, just those, your Outlook. I mean, do you really know? You probably know just enough to get by, but can you, instead of playing poker, maybe spend 5 minutes learning how to clean up your inbox or how to build rules in mail to sort your mail better? The answer is yes, you can. For $25, that's what you pay at Lucky's for a couple of drinks. You actually are improving your own skills, and if you're not growing, you're dying. I mean, that's my mantra. So it's given me, so I'm going to tell you just the individual story as a busy executive who needs to, in technology, who needs to stay ahead of the curve. It's right here. So it's wherever I go, I have a few minutes. What's great is they're 3 minutes, 5 minutes. They're really short, so you can get a little bite, and then you come back and it tells you what you watched. And you were saying I skip all over the place. I do. I look at my history. I'm sure if you analyze that, I would think, I don't know what you think of me. But so that's the individual experience. Now, we run a small business in a technology company where technology is changing all the time. So we're getting new tools that our people have to use and be facile with and do things that no one's ever done before. That's the great thing about technology companies, is we're inventing all of the time. So for our people, when they have a question, again, you can go to Google and you don't trust the source. This kind of speaks to your quality idea and these different voices. We know we can go to lynda.com. We've got five user license, and any of the people can go on and actually dig right to that little bit of lesson that they need to learn to figure out how to do something extremely technical. So learning how to blog or tweet or something like that, whatever. But if you're really having to program something very, very hardcore or set up servers, I mean, the breadth of material that's available to us, again, it's just in time. I can't afford to send someone to a class for a week, though we do a little bit of that. It's so much easier if you can, even in our business, carving out 30 minutes to study something that's just a challenge. But if they can go find exactly what I need just in time, it works great. And my last little story about this, because this has really helped us so much just to stay current. Again, to your point of books, it's just like, I don't want to read, but I will watch a video. We do that, and it's so easy to watch video now. We have a client who runs a huge advertising agency, and their skills are about, their whole mission is to kind of convert their whole agency to being digital. If we think of advertising agencies in the past, print and radio and TV and all the kinds of things they do. And now it's all about, apps on the iPhone and the iPad and being very, very digital. He's having to retrain his entire company, how they rethink. And we were in this meeting and I said, do you know about Lynda.com? And he hadn't heard. He's like the second guy from the top. And so we just opened it up and showed him, and we lost him for half an hour. It was that compelling, because when you're interested in a lot of different things, and it's like you walk into this library and it's, I'm interested in that, and I like that, and I like that, and okay, let's park all of that and let's just be inspired for a second and watch some of these interviews. Listen to some of these people just inspire us for a little bit. Oh, and then Lynda's a sponsor of the film festival here in Santa Barbara. They recorded the very best part of our festival. The writers panel, the director panel, the producers panels. Those are available free. You don't have to sign up. You can go watch those at Lynda.com. Again, from a sense of inspiring us, from listening to people who are those mentors, those people that really give us great ideas. Lynda.com is bringing that to us and all of us here. And thank you very much. We appreciate it. Thanks.
Thanks, Mark. I think just to reiterate what he said, I think it's amazing. It's true. What he was saying is that it doesn't matter where you are in a hierarchy within a company. It's not just a student level. It's not just an interaction level. Every person within an organization can use these tools and these tutorials to learn something and increase their productivity and just, I don't know, make themselves more useful to themselves. I'm not saying that right, but basically learning something new, continuing to grow, and taking that next step. Next up, Michael Berman is the Chief Information Officer at California State University, Channel Islands in Camarillo. He's also the owner of Amberman Ltd, LLC, providing IT consulting services to education and other industries. From 2005 through 2008, Michael was the Senior Vice President and Chief Technology Officer at Art Center College of Design in Pasadena. And prior to joining Art Center, he was the Senior Technology Administrator at 2 other universities. And he successfully implemented Lynda.com at Art Center, and he's going to speak a little bit about that, as well as the impact that it can have. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. I just want to comment on respond to a couple of things that people said. First of all, Lynda, learning by choice and not by force. Does anyone ever really learn anything by force? I'm not convinced that they do. At the end, I think it's really about choice. And Mark, what you said about being compelling and engaging, I mean, that is the challenge. That's one of the real challenges that we in the traditional education sector face. We have to figure out how to be compelling and engaging and do what we're supposed to do, which is to help students learn and move on in their lives. It's kind of appropriate that you had a panel on newspapers. I was thinking about this because my father spent his career working in newspapers, and I've spent my career working in higher education. So perhaps like father, like son, because the changes that are coming in education are no less profound, probably greater in their impact on society than the changes that are coming in newspapers. So I want to talk for a few minutes about that and how I see what Lynda and Bruce do and their team, and how that has changed the way, has been one of the things that's really changed the way that I think about education, what the impact is likely to be in the future. I also want to make it clear that I'm speaking for myself. If you get my boss, Dick Rush, out here, he can speak on behalf of the university, but I want to take the liberty of speaking for myself. I'm part of the leadership team there, and I'm very proud to be, but I don't want you to think that anything that I'm saying here is the official position of Cal State Channel Islands. Well, first of all, I could easily spend 10 minutes just talking about how effective what Lynda.com does, because I've seen it happen. I've seen it in my own life. I've seen it with students. It is quite remarkable. We use it at Channel Islands, and it's vital for my staff. It's available in the library, and we're certainly looking strategically about how it can have a bigger impact on how we work with students. What Lynda's a little too shy to say, although she alluded to it, is that they have a worldwide fan club. I mean, these people are rock stars, and I'll just tell you one story. They invited me to a party at an Apple event up in San Francisco, and we're standing there having cocktails, and there's 2 young women there, and we're talking to them about what they're doing and so forth. And one says, I really came here because I wanted to meet Bruce. And it's like, well, we know Bruce. You know Bruce? Really? Yeah, that's Bruce right over there. Really? Would you introduce us? So we took him over and introduced him, and they took pictures. And then right away, they're sending that picture on their cell phone. Look, we met Bruce from Lynda.com. He's the one who created that logo. He's brilliant. So, I mean, they have a huge fan club all over the world, and I'm certainly a member of that. But what they show is that education is changing dramatically. The future is already here. We just don't know it yet. But part of what the markers that we can see is that the economic model around education, especially higher education, is collapsing around our ears. And I think you can look at articles recently in the Los Angeles Times. Just recently there was one, is a college education still worth what you pay for it? It doesn't take a genius to look at the cost of a college education and to look at what people earn when they leave college and to look at what they owe and realize there's something really wrong. And there's a saying that if something is unsustainable, it won't be sustained. So change is coming, there's no doubt about it. And the newspaper business is a good example because a lot of times people talk about, say, Google as really hurting the news business, but it seems to me that it was Craigslist more than anything else. I mean, because as I understand the revenue model of most, and of course news business is a big business and not everybody has the same business model, but if you look at the traditional daily newspaper, the Los Angeles Times had a whole staff of people, probably 5 times the number of people in this room just answering phones and taking classified ads. Where are those people now? I mean, the classified ad sections like that. And that was all gravy, folks. I mean, there was no editorial in there. It was page after page after page of agate type with classified ads. And those ads were expensive. You remember you pay $75 or something to put your car up for sale. Who does that anymore? So what newspapers have done has exploded in many directions. And the same thing I think is going to happen with education. It's just going to take longer because there's a lot of inertia, but it really is happening. So if you look at what does a traditional education institution offer, it offers content delivery. Content is queen, no question about it. But also mentoring, feedback, assessment, accreditation, motivation, social connection. There's a lot of elements, even sports. USC used to do that. So there are new models coming up, sadly, from my perspective, because I've spent most of my career in either nonprofit or public higher education. They're mostly happening in the proprietary sector. I mean, Full Sail is a phenomenal example. If you're not familiar with what Full Sail is doing, you ought to take a look. You might have noticed they said, when our students are here for 21 months, 21 months, you've got a bachelor's degree. Not only that, if you decide now that you want to start your bachelor's degree in media design, you can start August 1st. They start every month. They start a class every month, a new cohort. This is the kind of innovation that our more traditional universities are going to have to take seriously if we're going to survive. Nobody can do it all anymore, and it doesn't make any sense for us to put an instructor, as good as that instructor might be, it could even be someone who works for Lynda, but to put them in front of a room and talk through what's in the Lynda.com video. It doesn't make any sense. Why should we charge a student to do that when Lynda can do it for pennies and we have to pay somebody to stand there and do it? In the California State University, our mission is access. We're supposed to reach as many people as we can. And the fact is that our access to what we have is not growing anywhere near as fast as what Lynda has. So we have to take that very seriously and say, where is the access? We can't continue to do it quite the way we've done it before. At Channel Islands, our mission is grounded in 4 principles. We want to be global. We want our students to be engaged in the community. We want to help them integrate across disciplines and to be multicultural. None of that has to do with delivering content. None of that has to do with teaching people how to use Photoshop. But people do need to learn how to use Photoshop, so where can they learn it? We should be focusing on the things that we really do well. And the value of delivering information is going down. And it's $25. You've kept the price of $25 for how long? Since you started. My guess is it's more likely to go down than up in the future. But our costs are not going down, they're going up. So education can't pretend that college is the only place you can go to get knowledge, because it simply isn't true anymore. And yet we still operate as if that were true. But the value of what you get, I mean, most of you because you're successful people. You've had people who cared about you and were your mentors. And you can probably look back and think about a teacher who really made a difference in your life. And there was a point maybe where you didn't know where to go or what to do, or they got you so excited about a subject. You know, it might have been accounting and finance, you know? You think accounting and finance, and you walked in, my God, that's the most interesting thing I've ever heard. I want to be an accountant, you know? And a lot of it is finding that through an individual that you make a personal connection with. And I think that's what colleges still can do today, to be compelling and engaging through human contact, to be mentors, teachers, and coaches. So to conclude, change is exhilarating and scary, and there's a lot of excitement. I'm excited, but there's also a lot of fear out there, and I have to work with that throughout education. Lynda.com is a great example of what you can do with today's technology, but there's a lot more to come, and maybe some will come from this room. And I think some of them, you'll see them at Channel Islands, because we do believe in innovation, and we're looking at how we can teach our students differently. We're the newest Cal State. Sometimes we're given a little more freedom. It's tough in a system with 400,000 students. Talk about personalization. But I know that President Rush is very serious about trying to move us forward in the next decade to really take advantage of what technology has to offer. So thank you very much for inviting me, and I hope you'll continue to be part and watch what we're doing at Channel Islands, because I think you're going to find it pretty exciting. So thank you very much.
Well, I'm going to start with a question then for Lynda, and it's one you probably hear all the time, but how often do you get approached by companies like Google looking to buy Lynda.com? Because it seems like, I mean, not that you're trying to plan for an exit strategy or anything like that, but my gosh, it seems like this would be right in their wheelhouse.
I don't think they've ever approached us.
Really?
But, you know, we definitely have been approached by a lot of investors, and we've had a few companies try and buy us. I think we've flown under the radar pretty successfully. You know, we didn't build the company to sell it, and I think that might frustrate a lot of investors. The trouble with taking these investments is that they start the time ticking in terms of when they want you to sell or go public or do something. So, you know, we just feel so fortunate that we've been able to kind of grow on our own terms and with our own profits and our own resources. And
Certainly.
It's something that we really value, is our autonomy and our ability to chart our own course and kind of do it our own way. So it's definitely not anything that we give much thought to at all.
Well, with 15 years running now, it seems like it's done nothing but grow. So
we're having a blast.
That's an excellent statement.
One comment on that. I mean, I think most of the companies that might think of trying to buy Lynda.com are not of the high quality that they are, and so it'd be hard to talk them into it.
Thank you.
Okay. Questions from our audience? Yes.
I have, if I go onto Google and type in a question like, how can I get Excel to do this? Will Lynda.com show up as a potential answer?
I would hope so. It could. There's a high probability that it would. You know, there's a lot to kind of gaming the search engines, and people pay to get higher position, and they do a lot of tricks to get higher positions. But we actually, through natural search, come up quite often, and it's because of our text transcripts. Because I think if we were doing everything just in straight video, we wouldn't be exposing the content of what's within those videos. And it's actually been a huge investment on our part to do closed captioning for every one of our videos. It's a great expense to us. But we think it's well worth it for the benefits of search. And I think it's also been a great SEO strategy.
Okay. Yes.
To Lynda, you have a very interesting company. Who are your top two competitors in the online video library field, and how are your market shares trending, and do you care?
Well, let me start with do I care? Because I tend to, it's funny because Bruce, my husband, is a painter, and he almost never really looks at other people's work that much in terms of his own work. And I thought that was really interesting. When I met him, he's like, well, I want my own style. I don't want to be influenced by what other people are doing. And I really look to be original. That's what I pride myself in. And I think for me, if we keep our eye on the quality and we keep our eye on the reaction and the response that people are having to our product, I think that's the best place to keep our attention. And if you start chasing what competitors are doing and what others are doing versus really looking to what your own members want and what your own internal compass is telling you is what you want to do and what what you're good at, then I think that's just a problem anyway. It's not the way that we don't operate that way. Or who you think our biggest competitor is, Michael?
Oh, I can't remember the names. There's one out in Virginia that has some good titles in certain areas. There's several of them. Certainly in education, Linda's got by far the biggest mind share for this type of product, I think, right now. There's no question about it.
I think that probably owes to the depth and breadth of the offerings that you have. Quality. Yeah, and quality, and that speaks a lot to it, and everything that you do in-house as opposed to trying to ship things off. So, and the collaboration that you have with your contributors.
And I think we've cared about the right things,
Yeah.
I mean, I think we've, because we had this background and we're industry insiders from the beginning and could really recognize a good teacher from a bad teacher and really recognize, because we had a certain level of expertise ourselves, and predict what people needed and wanted to learn. I think that's been a huge competitive advantage, that we're actually passionate about this stuff, and it's what we love to do. So.
Okay. Yes.
Hi, Linda. One of the things I was most excited to hear about was your background in the arts, and Bruce's too, and I wondered if you could speak to how an arts background has informed your process and success.
I think that's a great question. I was recently at a conference where I was hearing a talk about a new term that's being coined that's called design thinking. And the idea is that when you're an analytical thinker, you're really basing a lot of your credence on facts and analytics and things that can be proven and that are scientific. And so when you rely entirely on analytics, you're basically proving what can be proven. And when you're a design thinker, it was characterized as you're willing to work a little bit on your intuition and your gut and give that also credence. And you're willing to invent something where there is no data to tell you that it will work or it won't work. And I thought that was, very true of the way we approached our business, in that a lot of it really was intuition and gut and just going on an internal compass that was telling us this is how to do it. We don't really like the way it's being done in a lot of textbooks. We don't really like the way that it's being done in schools. We don't really like the way that it's, we saw all the things that we didn't like. And we decided to, see if we could do better. And I think that was a lot of what guided us. So.
Okay, yes.
Yeah, I'm David Litchell. I'm a Vice President at Brooks Institute, and I have a comment and a question. We have Linda's multi-user license for all our students and faculty, and they use that on a regular basis. And the person that you saw that Linda had up first is one of our faculty members, Chris Orwig, and I can attest that he is a rock star. He's very friendly and popular with the 1,000 students at Brooks Institute, but he gets emails daily from people around the world. This is truly a globalization that's happening. But my question has to do with Michael and Linda, who are both educators, different ends of the spectrum. Michael in a traditional school, but Linda, doing this online training, education. And it seems like there has to be more of a merger. I'd like to hear something about the future as you see it, because I'm sure your company, Linda, is growing and changing with the times. And Michael, you've already spoken about how there's a need for public universities and even a school like us to change. I'd just like you to address, maybe as far out as you can see, a fast-moving train, it might only be a couple years.
You want to take that?
Well, I think that one of the trends you're going to see that's going to continue to grow, and I think what Linda talks about epitomizes that, is students taking ownership of their own learning. Largely because they're not going to have a choice, because in order to be successful, you have to be a lifelong learner. We've talked about it for years, but there really is no alternative anymore in this world. And you know, just-in-time learning is absolutely essential. And the reality is that for what a lot of people want out of life, a college degree isn't really necessary. It's of high value for many people, but it isn't necessary for everyone. And so I think it's the many more models, many more paths, and the tools in the internet, and just finding your own way through the world through social connection. I'll tell you just a story. I met a man from LucasArts who's based in Singapore, and he was talking about hiring staff to work there. And he was telling me about a guy he hired who had just turned 18. He was waiting for him to turn 18 so he could hire him, so he could relocate him from, I think, Slovakia to Singapore to work on his team. And this was somebody who at 12 or 13 decided he had a passion for doing animation and graphic design. And so living in his apartment in Slovakia and using the internet, he taught himself how to do this. And it wasn't just looking at videos and following instruction. It was also the social connection, because by the time he was 15 or 16, he was connected to a worldwide network of people who were interested in what he was doing, and he was getting constant critique and feedback on what he's doing. Now, not everybody has that level of passion and motivation to do that, of course. And I'd like to think that some of what traditional education can do is help students find their passion so that they can go off and do that. But if there's only one model, if people think there's only one model, which is you have to get a 4-year college degree that looks like a particular kind of degree, like a UC degree or a Cal State degree, or you know, many other institutions that we know and love, that many of them do a very good job for many students. But the idea that that's the only choice that you have, I think, is breaking down, and I think there's going to be many more alternatives. And I think that public education has a responsibility, again, this is my personal opinion, to kind of unbundle what we offer and offer certificate programs and other types of instruction, and allow people to combine so that, you know, perhaps you can spend part of your time at Brooks and part of your time at Channel Islands and do something really meaningful. I don't think, we have an art degree, we don't have a photography degree, for example. But we're really bad at that, and I don't know about Brooks, but I know that so much, but I know that colleges in general are really bad at that. We want to start with this 18-year-old and go through, and in 22 they come out and get a degree, even though we know that's not the reality. It's not, statistically we know that's not the reality. We know people start at different times, they take different amounts of time. So I think we're just going to have to recognize more personalization, more different paths, and then I think where we can add value as educators is to be partners with the learner to help them find their path.
And I think there is so much about a college education that really has nothing to do with the degree and nothing even to do with the subject matter that you learn. There's so much of it that has to do with just interacting with others and the socialization side of it, and the critical thinking side of it, and the networking side of it. I mean, I know to this day I'm still dear friends with people that I went to college with. And many of the job opportunities that I got as I was progressing through my career came as a result of those friendships. And that, today what a lot of people really don't understand is how to present themselves, how to present information, just having good communication skills, good writing skills, good, problem-solving skills. And so I would love to see schools focus a lot on creating those kinds of experiences. And I agree with everything that you said as well. But I do think that there are things that really can't be done online. I mean, the thing to figure out is what is best done in this new world order where you memorialize the great thinkers and you create great lessons like we do is one aspect of it. But there are things that we can't do and that we don't do, and that where we really need to partner with traditional education to make it a more well-rounded experience. And I actually had the privilege of being a commencement speaker at Brooks a couple of, maybe about a year ago. It was a while ago. I think it was last summer. And I was quite taken with what one of the students said. And she was the student commencement speaker. And she said, when I first came to the school and I turned in my first assignment and I worked so hard and I stayed up all night and I showed it to the teachers and the class, and I was totally ripped apart, and I thought it was so unfair because I worked so hard on it, and I was just, just enraged and bitter. And she said, now 4 years later, I realized the huge favor that they were doing for me and the huge gift that I now understand what is good work and what is bad work, and it has nothing to do with how much effort I put into it. It's helping me understand where the bar is set and who the great photographers before me are, and where I fit in. I thought that was something I can't imagine she could have achieved through an online education. That was a very specific experience that she had at Brooks, which was going to shape her whole career. So I definitely think finding the sweet spot is the challenge, and that we're searching for the answers. I think you make a lot of great points.
Okay. Henry?
Hi, Henry Dubroff from the Pacific Coast Business Times. My first real job was teaching at an alternative high school in Massachusetts. So I did it for 4 years, and the art students were very poor and very disadvantaged, but it was still an amazing experience. And a lot of it was modeled on the free school movement. Anyway, so this is sort of a follow-on to that thought, which is, do you find or do you see potential for your students or your members to form user groups and to kind of create a community? Maybe you need some intro networks software to help you do that, but I'll get the $5 later, Mark. But seriously, do you think that you could sort of nudge your model closer to an academic, a more of a learning environment, a sort of a university that exists sort of in the air, so that you can get kind of skills collaboration and create a kind of a more rich environment that's not just about, the 10 users at Patagonia talking about how they use lynda.com to, do Excel better or something. Anyway, that was my question.
I think it's a great question, and we talk all the time internally about how and when we're going to introduce community. And I think for us, unfortunately, we're restricted by resources and just the amount of time that it takes to create a product. And anybody who's ever built an application, which is really what we are, we're a web-based application, will know how challenging it is to build the software and have it work everywhere. And so we have a lot of, just sort of technical reasons why we have not introduced community yet. And also I think doing it right is something that we're searching for. I mean, we look at a lot of forums that are out there where people are helping each other, and a lot of them are not very successful. They're a lot more successful if there's actually an expert who can, like, I think about all the different software forums that are out there, and one of the very best ones is with the software companies, where they're actually paying people to go and be the, help all of the other learners. So I think rather than create something where we just let all our members kind of figure it out on their own and serendipitously come up with good stuff and bad stuff, we've been trying to think a little bit deeper about how we could still have enough quality around the experience that they're going to have to make it meaningful. And we do see that there are a lot of different communities online that are happening in other environments that where some are successful and some are not successful. And we're just really doing a lot of studying and thinking and talking, and we don't have a 100% direction, but it's on the top of our mind, absolutely.
Well, it's no accident that Facebook's the third largest country in the world, and by numbers. And if I can recommend a thinker and a reader on this topic, John Seeley Brown, who's written on the social life of learning, argues that really all learning is socially constructed. So, I mean, I think Mark could probably talk to this. The personal learning networks that people build are incredibly valuable, and I'm sure that Lynda knows that her their customers are out there building those connections with other people. I'm sure they're finding each other on Facebook and other ways and talking about the courses they're taking. So I'm sure it's happening now, and I think that that social piece has been undervalued traditionally by traditional education, but it's incredibly, incredibly important. And I think the whole nature of it has changed because of online, and the generation that's coming up now totally expects that their social connections will be as much online as offline, and maybe more online than offline.
We've been actually taking our networks that are smart social networks and kind of repositioning them as knowledge networks. Because what's happening, just because we're seeing how people use them, and inside a large corporate environment, what happened, they don't have a Lynda.com license and they need to find an expert. The old way of doing that was they send a spam, well, an email out to everybody, which is spam, which everybody ignores. As opposed to with a knowledge network, I can go, if it's rich enough of a database based on skills and experience and passion and interests, someone could go find in a population of 10,000 people, the 7 people who are likely to be subject matter experts in that thing you need to know, again, back to just-in-time learning. But there's another component to that social learning piece, which is a huge topic now in corporate education, social learning, is what's called informal learning. And informal learning is, we're having it right now. We're all learning right now. This is informal learning. Going to a Google page and learning something, that's informal learning. Asking someone is informal learning. Jay Cross is the guy who wrote the book on that and kind of called that whole notion out. And we saw that what we're doing, that community part, is really supports the informal learning that happens. So in the context of online learning, where I don't know if I want to find out, is that the right class? Or like, for instance, you've got 20 Photoshop authors. I may find, I don't know which one's the most popular or the most effective, or people like that one. So I could trial and error, or go into my little learning group and people say, oh no, you've got to, like Chris Orwig is the bomb. You know, you really want to look at Chris's stuff. So there's a role for that, and it's slowly starting to happen. With Facebook, the challenge is it's just kind of all over the map, and I think your quality is down in that.
Sure.
Where when you build these private networks, you have really high quality because everybody's in there, and it's a real purpose-driven kind of situation.
And it goes even beyond just like taking a poll to see what people like. It's because you like what someone else likes, because you learn what the people in your social network are liking, what they're good at, and who's like you and who has similar taste on similar things. Exactly. So you value that recommendation much more than, say, just a ranking that says that most people like this class.
Very true.
Okay.
Hi, Linda. I'm actually from Kenya originally, but I live in Santa Barbara at the moment. And I'm really excited about this for many reasons. But one of them is, how can I get this into Africa? And most of them can't really afford $25 a month. So I've been sitting through this meeting smiling at you, in case you're wondering, because I'm catching on to what you're saying and seeing this huge, huge potential for Africa. And I don't know if anyone's been to Kenya, but they are the most wonderful, open, enthusiastic people who love to learn. And there's such a gap in education now. You know, Africa's getting left behind more and more. There's also the issue of technology. You know, we all know what's happening. But if there's a time where we could maybe get together and discuss how we could bridge this into Africa, I think it would be a great, great service, and how I could get it sponsored or something.
Fantastic. And, you know, one of the things that I did not say is that 10% of what we publish is 100% free, and anybody can, you know, access it from anywhere. And, you know, like including the Santa Barbara Film Festival footage that we shot. But this concerns us as well, and Bruce and I, you know, spend many hours talking about how we could take Lynda.com into third world countries, how we could even take this model and show it as a proof of concept for other topics and subject matters, and you know, inspire others to build a similar type of business for all of the different, you know, types of knowledge that are needed in the world, not just this computer knowledge.
Even the Maasai tribes have little cell phones out in the bush. It's just amazing. And it's helped so much. You know, it's really helped. And the viral networking is phenomenal. but they can't really get online with those. So it's not like the iPhone, you know. So we'll have to figure something out.
There definitely are some hurdles, but they'll go away.
Yes.
And I do think mobile is a way bigger movement than the PC. I mean, it's definitely hitting hard and going to hit much harder.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Hi, Linda. I was just reflecting on one of the slides you had. It had a number of circles in it. At the center of the circle was the project-based learning. There was the domain-specific learning. And one of them was about inspiration, which I went and saw some of those today. It reminds me a bit of what TED does. TED is kind of inspirational. I'm wondering if you've ever been on TED as a side question or thought of that. But in terms of who looks at the inspirational material, is it the beginners, the intermediates, the advanced, or is it all of them? Do you have any breakdown and statistics for that?
We do have a breakdown, and actually you're almost sitting next to Tanya Staples, our director of production, and do you know those statistics specifically of she doesn't run the content side of things, so she may not. But the inspirational videos are among the most popular videos that we publish, and they are watched by the widest population. And we were, really struck by the importance of inspiration through a couple of channels, and TED was definitely one of them. And Bruce and I attend TED, we're TEDsters, and so does Mark. And are definitely very amazed by what has been accomplished through spreading the TED Talks for free. And that was perhaps one of the ideas. And really the big fodder for doing the Creative Inspirations was that we used to run a conference called Flash Forward, which was a conference about Adobe Flash. And it highlighted all of the most amazing creative minds who are the most cutting edge developers and designers of Flash materials. And so when we stopped doing the conference, I realized, gee, I'm really sad to stop doing this conference because I'm going to miss the inspiration of it so much. And then it kind of struck me like, why can't Lynda.com be inspiring too? And that was really where I got the idea. It was modeled after this conference that was similar to TED, but a little more niche-y and on one, very isolated topic.
Yes.
Perhaps I didn't hear this. Do you receive any funding from the software companies for creating content, and what are the ethical challenges around that?
We typically do not do any work for hire, and that's been a very big challenge for us because all of the software companies would love for us to do work for hire for them. And we have actually taken licensing fees from some of the software companies to license what we've already created. And sometimes, like with Adobe, they've put a lot of our videos into their online portals, and also for many people who've bought the different creative suites. Sometimes the Lynda.com subscription is an incentive if you go ahead and register your product. There have been a few times where we have taken money from software companies to work on different projects, but we've always done it with the caveat that they can't control the end product, and that we will, expose the problems with the software, not only it's not selling, it's not a marketing video, but we have gotten farther and farther away from wanting to do it at all. The few times where we have accepted money, it's just been difficult because we're really not set up to be that kind of company. Anybody who's ever had a company where you do work for hire and you deal with clients and you please them and you go through approval processes and you have, handlers and all the different things that are required when you do that kind of work are just not really suited to the way that we're set up. We're much more of a internally critical group of people who are looking to, do it kind of do it as well as we can do it, and we don't like to really politicize anything or err on the side of what a marketing message might be. We really prefer to truly help people, And I think that's tough for software companies because their true end goal is that they want to sell software. And our true end goal is that we want to teach software. And they're sometimes not the same thing. In fact, most of the times they're not the same thing. So I know Tanya also was telling me recently that she was talking about with her team putting on T-shirts, "We don't do work for hire," and like all of them wearing it because they hate doing work for hire so much. And it's definitely been, you know, a push-pull because a lot of companies would love to have the high-quality tutorials that we're creating for their software or for their, you know, for anything, for any kind of. We get all kinds of requests to do custom training for entities, even non-software entities, because we do it really well. And that's been one of those things that we've had to learn. We just have to focus. And, you know, we have the remarkable opportunity to have a paying customer base that, you know, much like PBS, where that's who we need to please, not a client. And that's been, you know, a learning process for us to turn away work, especially when you're a startup and you're self-funded and all those things. But that's something that we've learned as a pretty strong lesson, that we have our own ecosystem, we are our own publisher, and we tend to know how to, you know, that our own quality standards are really high, and we have the validation that our membership appreciates the way that we do it and wants us to continue to do it the way that we do it. So we have to kind of stick to that as being our core strength.
Maybe one more question?
I assume that basically most of your users are English speakers or at least able to deal in English. Is there a need to translate into other languages and all that sort of thing?
Oh yes, there's a huge need. And it's another thing like community that's on our list of to-dos that we aren't ready quite yet to do, because what a lot of people don't realize is that software in other languages actually is not just a direct translation. Often there are different command keys. Often the keys on the keyboard are in different locations. Some of the nomenclature is very different, and even cultures are very different. For example, one time we did translate some software for Corel, which is a software company in Canada, and they had a very big German-speaking population that used the software that we had created training in, and so they paid us to localize it in German. But one of the directives that we got was that Germans, and I don't know if this is, you know, I had to take their word for it, really frown upon the casual style that we teach in, and they view it as being uneducated, that there are different sort of versions of the language, but if you're more formal and more scripted, you're going to be more respected. Whereas I think in the US, we appreciate the casual tone and the friendliness and the kind of eye to eye, you know, we're on your side sort of thing, rather than we are the teachers, you know, lording this over you. And so, you know, just that was really eye-opening, that the cultural differences between languages and the keyboard differences. And so it's really not just a matter of taking the captioned text and translating it into another language. In our opinion, to do it right, it would be to completely re-record the material in the native language with the native software and with the awareness of the cultural, you know, differentials. And so it is on our to-do list. It's something that we hope to be able to do in a couple of years. And when we do it, we would like to do it right, rather than just a straight translation.
But one comment, put yourself in the position of a student either born in America but who grew up in a house where the native language is Korean or Armenian or Spanish or Chinese, and you've learned English well enough to go to college, but you know, you may still have a little trouble listening to a teacher, and a teacher standing in front of you and going very quickly how to use Photoshop one time, and if you miss something, you've missed it, it's done. Now you got to go find it somewhere else. And compare that to having a video. You can watch it as many times as you want, and there's a text transcript. So if you have a little trouble understanding the way somebody pronounced something, you can read the text. I mean, so when you consider the huge number of the people who want this knowledge are not native English speakers, even in the US or around the world, I think that's a whole another perhaps hidden advantage. I thought when you were going to talk about the text transcripts, you're going to mention that, but that's incredibly valuable to learners and as well as learners who have hearing impairments and other things. So it does make it much more accessible.
The reason I asked the question was because of your Slovakian example. Was he must have known enough English to get started that way, and how many others didn't and don't, and
That's right.
therefore are really prevented from access.
There's a lot of need, a huge amount of need that we are not satisfying, and we know it. And we would love nothing more than to be able to localize what we do in numerous languages, and we hope to be able to do that probably in the next couple of years.
Well, there's still a huge market out there.
Yeah.
And on that, on behalf of the MIT Enterprise Forum for the Central Coast, I'd like to thank you all for being here tonight, Linda, Mark, and Michael. And thank you all for helping us round out our 2009-2010 season. We hope that you join us again in September 15th will be our next event. Keep a lookout on our website, and we'll also be hopefully contacting you by email. Feel free to take a few minutes to introduce yourselves to some folks around you tonight. And thanks very much. And we still have a little bit of daylight left, too. So thank you.